Hello everyone. So today I'm going to show you how to create validation rules in Salesforce. So what are validation rules? Validation rules verifies that data entered by users in records meets the standards you specify before they can save it. So a validation rule can contain a formula or expression that evaluates the data in one or more fields and returns a value of true or false. These validation rules can apply to both future data and current data. So, the admin may need to populate the required data of the existing records to ensure any future integrations aren't blocked. Validation rules can be created for both standard and custom objects. When the validation rule returns a value of true, this confirms that the data entered by the user contains an invalid value. Validation rules can also include error messages to display to user when they enter invalid values based on specified criteria. Now, we are going to see few examples. I'll take you through the first one and then together we are going to create the second and third examples. So, the first one says that an account object when the type is equal to prospect and industry is one of these values, then some of the fields in the additional information section is required. Let me point out the type and industry fields here are a pick list. So let's go ahead and see how this validation rule triggers. So here I'm in Salesforce. In the object manager, we are going to go ahead and click the account. Scroll down to validation rules. So here I have a validation rule with the name additional section required. Here, the first thing that you specify is the rule name, then whether it's active or inactive by checking this checkbox, and then the error condition formula. So the first pick list that I chose is the type, and I have to selected the prospect as the value here. Next, I pulled in some of the values from the industry field in an OR condition because I want one of these to be selected, or if selected, one of these. Next, I have pulled in some of the fields from the additional section required. If one of these are left blank as mentioned in the text literal here, then this validation rule will trigger. I've binded all of these together in an AND condition because I want all three conditions to work out. So let's go ahead and see. Here, I'm going to go ahead and create a new account. I'm going to say the account name is Salesforce Hire. Next, I'm going to fill in some of the fields here. The parent account as Parallel Industries. Next, I'm going to pull in the type as prospect and the industry as, let's say, education. Now I'm going to go ahead and save it and see if it triggers. So here we have the error message which says that fields in additional information section is required for selected type and industry. Since our validation rule has the type as prospect and industry as one of these four, we have specified here, this error has been triggered. So let's go ahead and fill these and see if it allows us to save the record. Once I try saving it, yes, it did allow me to get past the validation rule. Moving on to the second example here. So here we are going to choose a lead object And the condition is going to be that when the lead status is equal to closed converted, then the annual revenue field is required. So let's go ahead and create this validation rule in lead object. I'm going to go back to object manager and select lead object from the list. Scroll down to validation rules and create a new one. So the first thing to do is create a rule name. I'm going to say annual revenue required. I'm going to say it's active. Next, I'm going to create the error condition formula, for which first I'm going to select the status field and its value closed converted, for which I'm going to choose isPickVal function. So the isPickValue function checks whether the value of the picklist field is equal to the text literal here. So I'm going to pull in the field. I'm going to say lead status, insert, and next I'm going to replace this with my value. So now I have my pick list and its value. Next, I'm going to pull in the annual revenue field. If the annual revenue field is not populated, then I want the validation rule to be triggered. So I'm going to choose the isBlank function here. This function checks whether this expression given here is blank, and based on that it's going to return true or false. I'm going to say annual revenue and insert. Next, we want both of these conditions to be triggered, and for which we are going to choose another function, which is the AND function. So I'm going to go ahead and just type and close the bracket here. Let's go ahead and check the syntax. Looks like there's no errors. Moving on, let's type the error message. Let's say the annual revenue field cannot be empty when status is closed converted. Now that I've typed my error message, I can choose where to locate this. It can be on the top of the page or near the field. So I'm going to choose the top of the page and save. Once the validation rule is saved here, we're going to go ahead and test it by creating a new lead. So I'm going to go ahead to the leads object and create a new one. Let's give a salutation, first name, last name. I'm going to go ahead and change the lead status to closed converted and see if it triggers the validation rule. So here, this validation rule says that the annual revenue is required when status is closed converted. Let's try and fill the annual revenue and see if it allows us to save the record. You can choose to limit the annual revenue like less than 50,000, greater than 25,000. It depends on your requirement. Let's try and save it now. Yep, once the error was fixed, it allowed us to create the lead. Let's go to our last example. So the last example is for an opportunity object. So I have pulled in here two fields which are custom. So the first field is the layers field, which is a pick list and has the values 2 layered, 3 layered and 4 layered. And then I have a quality field for which I don't want the value to be less than or equal to 40 when one of the pick list value is 3 layered or 4 layered. So let's go ahead and create this validation rule, an opportunity object. In the object manager, I'm going to scroll down to the opportunity object, scroll down to validation rules. I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to say quality check. I'm going to go ahead and create the error condition formula here. So here, first we are going to pull in two fields. The first one is the layers field. Again, I'm going to choose the isPick value function because we cannot directly pull in a value from a pick list. So here we have the isPick value function, and in place of the pick list field, I'm going to pull in our field here, which is layers. Next, I'm going to replace this with my value. I also have another value in the same field, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this function again and replace this pick list field again with the same field and replace this value with 4 layered. Since at a time we cannot pick both the values and I want the trigger to go if either one of this is triggered, I'm going to go ahead and put this under the OR function. Next, I'm going to go ahead and pull in the quality field, and this field has to be less than or equal to 40. Let's say less than or equal to 40. I'm going to separate it by a comma. Here we have this as one condition and this as the second condition. When we want to combine both of them together, like I mentioned, we are going to use an AND function here. So now, if one of this pick value is picked and the quality is less than or equal to 40, then this trigger is going to be pulled in. I'm going to write the error message. So let's say the quality cannot be less than or equal to 40, then 3 layer or 4 layer. Looks good to me. We can choose the error location. I'm going to pull in the field and let's say the field has quality here. Okay, so now I've chosen the field and I'm going to go ahead and save it. Once the validation rule is saved, I'm going to go ahead and create a new opportunity and see if the validation triggers as required. I'm going to go ahead and create a new opportunity with the name Harrow Textiles. I'm going to go ahead and populate other fields, close date as 30 of this month, say qualification, lead source as partner referral. I'm going to give in some details here as next box type. I'm going to go ahead and choose 4 layer. And I'm going to leave this as 25. So let's scroll down and try saving this and see if it allows us to save it. So when the error location is field, it triggers and it takes us to the quality field, and then it shows the error that the quality cannot be less than or equal to 40 when 3 layered or 4 layered. So I'm going to go ahead and try saving this as 50. Once saved, so the validation rule allowed us to save the record once the error was fixed. Before you begin, consider all the settings in your organization that can make a record fail. Validation, including assignment rules, field updates, field level security, or fields hidden on a page layout. When you create a custom object, make sure that those objects are deployed. So let me take you through some quick points. So first one is an error message like invalid entry doesn't tell the user what type of entry is valid. So like we saw in our examples, the error messages are important because it takes the user to where the error is specifically. Next, avoid using the is closed or is one opportunity merge fields in validation formulas. Instead, use the is_pick_val function to determine if the stage contains the appropriate value. In our examples, we did see that we picked a status field for a lead object to pick the appropriate value from the pick list. The last one is when a validation rule contains the begins or contains function, it processes blank fields as valid. So this is something that you have to keep in mind when you use either of these functions. We come to an end of how to create validation rules and what are they. So thank you for watching.